No, we sold that one in August of last year.
Living the dream.
Commerce.
I had a baby, and we started another restaurant in Roswell, and that drive to Alpharetta just got longer every time I made it. So,
We got a little light reading here.
A little light reading.
This is It is.
this is my little girl.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get started in just 1 minute. If you are speaking today, it'd be best if you sat on this side so you'll have easy access to the podium over there. But we'll get started in just 1 minute. Thank you. Everybody quieted it down quickly. All right, good morning. Thank you for attending today to Senate Resolution 275, the Study Committee of Expanding Georgia's Workforce. My name is John Albers. I serve in Senate District 56 and am honored to chair the Study Committee. I also serve as the Chairman of Public Safety for the Senate. We're going to, in a moment, do a very brief introduction of the committee members. As mentioned earlier, if you're speaking today, we want to be on this side just for easy access. The podium is here. We've got exits on all sides of the building, and the restrooms are back up on the side door here for anybody that needs to use them. But I'm going to begin as we begin every Senate committee meeting, and that is with a quick prayer and blessing. I'm going to ask Senator Hickman to please open us up.
Thank you. Let us pray. Oh, Heavenly Father, what a wonderful day you've given us, Lord. The sun is shining, the breeze is scared, Lord. We just thank you, and we feel your presence every time we move, Lord. We know that we're two or more together, you're in our midst, Lord, and we thank you for that. Lord, we just ask you to be with us through this study committee, Lord. Help us to help figure out, Lord, the workforce for Georgia. Lord God, we love you and praise you. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. We're going to begin at the end. Dave, if you will, we're just going to do a very brief introduction of the committee members so you know who you're speaking to today.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Dave Williams. I'm with the Metro Atlanta Chamber.
Champ Bailey, Football Hall of Famer, entrepreneur, philanthropist.
I'm Billy Hickman from Statesboro, Senate District 4, which is Evans County, Campbell County, Bullock County, Effingham County, and part of Chatham County. Thank you.
Jason Estevez, Senate District 6, includes parts of City of Atlanta, Fulton, and Cobb counties.
And again, John Albers, Senate District 56, that is part of Fulton, Cherokee, and Cobb County.
Good morning, Daniela Perry, Vice President of the Georgia Chamber Foundation.
Good morning, Ryan Pernice, restaurateur in Roswell, Georgia.
Brandon Beach, State Senate, District 21, North Fulton, Cherokee.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We've got a couple of folks that were unable to make it. However, we are fortunate to have this meeting currently being recorded, and we'll talk about the logistics in a moment. We'll give you a background of how this was started. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones made this one of his top priorities for expanding Georgia's workforce and asked me earlier this year if we could sponsor some legislation and appoint a committee that would take a look at how we're really able not just to meet the current, but also the future job needs and demands and skills in order for Georgia to thrive. We have been blessed. #1 state to do business for 9 years. It seems like every week or sometimes a couple of times a week, we see great announcements from Governor Kemp about new jobs and industries moving here. All of that news is wonderful, and we need to make sure we have the workforce to support that. And obviously, we've seen a pretty big shift in that, especially since going through the COVID pandemic. We will continue to host another meeting out throughout the state. The next one will be in Dalton, Georgia. And then the final meeting is going to be held at the state capitol. At that time, we will have a report that will be sent out through the committee members ahead of time to get everybody's feedback, and we will use that information in order to formalize what we believe the recommendations will be in working with the Lieutenant Governor's office that will create either legislation, budget items, rules, and/or recommendations. Lexi in the back, if you would wave your hand, who is leading our Senate Press Office, has done a phenomenal job with setting up a website, which you should see behind me. We encourage everyone who's got questions about the committee members, the locations, et cetera, to go here, as well as there's impossible for us to hear from everyone throughout the state of Georgia, even though a lot of people certainly have more to add than just the speakers at any one given meeting. And we encourage you to go onto our website, and you can submit your testimony that way as well. We are looking through, reading, listening, depending on the type of medium you sent over to us, and all that will be taken into account by Haley, who runs our Senate Research Office, who is helping to pull all the presentations, all of the testimony into one place as we work on those recommendations. And I would like to ask the committee members again, we're sending some emails out with what we've been absorbing throughout that, to continue to look at that, please, so we don't get to the last meeting and we have to remember what happened a few months ago. It keeps us all on track. We have several other folks who are helping here today. I've got to point out here to my left, Ms. Allison Bailey. She's been with us a little over a month now, and for those of you who remember Allie Farmer, she took her position and is doing a wonderful job in coordinating. If you have any questions about the committee logistics, please work directly with Allison. Okay, with that in mind, we've got a couple of folks we want to get up sooner than later to keep on schedule, and we're going to begin today with our very own, one of our largest healthcare providers in our entire state. And Shane, if you would come down to the podium, Shane Jackson and Jackson Healthcare has been a tremendous partner through the state of Georgia and local communities for a long time. We're proud to have it. We know that you're busy, and we appreciate you making the journey up here today, and we will turn it over to you for a presentation.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning. As mentioned, my name is Shane Jackson, President of Jackson Healthcare. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just want to start by thanking you for the invitation to be here today. This is an important topic for the state of Georgia. So as a little background about Jackson Healthcare, as was mentioned, we're one of the nation's largest healthcare staffing and technology companies. Our business helps ensure people and communities across the country have access to healthcare when and where they need it. We employ or contract with more than 20,000 healthcare providers who care for over 10 million patients all across the U.S., including more than 2,500 here in our home state of Georgia. This includes doctors, nurses, therapists, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and many others, with a significant portion of these caregivers working in rural areas of the state. We also have a robust staff of professionals that support these caregivers, including more than 1,400 based out of our corporate headquarters in Alpharetta. We've always thought of Georgia as being a great place for talent. As you know, education and training is vitally important. And by and large, I really believe our state does a good job. We have continually had success working with many Georgia colleges and finding hardworking young people ready to enter the professional workforce. And we're able to attract many experienced professionals who work in Georgia's thriving business ecosystem. It is very important for us to be in a state that has an environment that is friendly for both employers and employees. We've seen firsthand what bad public policy can do to companies and to workers. We see it playing out now in areas of the country that are losing businesses and cutting jobs. Half of our 2,800 support employees work in states other than Georgia. And I assure you that we are very deliberate about which states and cities we will open offices in based on the local policy environment. I would like to encourage our leaders in Georgia to protect what we have from a job creator and worker perspective. While Georgia's history is one of being business and worker friendly, it is under threat, and there is still much work to be done. I'd like to focus my comments today on two issues that are specifically impacting our ability to attract healthcare workers to Georgia. I'm sure I don't need to tell this committee about the great shortage of healthcare workers that we face compared to the ever-growing need to care for patients. This is an especially acute challenge in our rural communities where 26% of our state's residents reside. The first issue is the current legal environment in Georgia in regard to medical malpractice specifically and tort law in general. Georgia is now known as being among the worst places in the country to be a defendant. The number of large verdicts in Georgia is surpassing all other states. Incredibly, last year, Georgia bypassed California in the number of verdicts over $10 million. Think about that. We had more so-called nuclear verdicts than a state with 3 times our population. Malpractice premiums for healthcare professionals in Georgia have increased at a rate well beyond our neighboring states. Premiums paid for healthcare liability in Georgia increased by 50% from 2018 to 2022. Malpractice insurers in Georgia are paying claims that are much higher than the country overall, and they're paying out more than they're taking in premiums. This has led to insurance companies leaving the market, which leaves fewer options here in Georgia. Over the past 3 years, a defendant in the state of Georgia paid a loss severity average in excess of $600,000. That is 50% higher than the national average of approximately $400,000. Now, these numbers are not secret. Doctors that we are trying to recruit to Georgia know them, and they are becoming increasingly reluctant to come here to work where they would be putting their own personal well-being at risk due to the environment of litigation in our state. Plain and simple, the legal environment in Georgia makes it harder for us and other healthcare providers to attract medical talent to come here. And that means many Georgians are not going to get the preventative, acute, and palliative care they need. The second issue I'd like to speak to is scope of practice laws. There is significant and growing demand for doctor care today, and not enough doctors to provide it. As a country, we cannot train enough physicians to meet the current demands. I want to say that again. We cannot train enough physicians to meet the demand. We simply do not have the infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, the shortage of physicians is felt most acutely in our rural areas. This challenge of providing medical care in rural communities is not unique to Georgia. However, the majority of states have begun to address this challenge by utilizing advanced practice professionals, such as nurse practitioners, to provide primary and other types of care. Advanced practice professionals are one of the major resources we have to address the physician shortage that is only going to worsen over the next decade. More than half the states in our country have laws that empower nurse practitioners to practice medicine without physician supervision. This is not new. Over the past several years, other states have proven that advanced practice professionals can deliver effective, quality care. Unfortunately, today, Georgia is one of the most restrictive states in the nation on these providers. The scope of practice laws in Georgia make it incredibly difficult to recruit nurse practitioners to come here. I recently had a conversation with a nurse practitioner who had moved to Georgia when her spouse's job required him to relocate here. She came from a state where she had full practice authority. She described working in Georgia as, quote, demeaning and insulting. And she told me that although her husband loved his job, he was now actively looking for one in another state so that she could escape the environment in Georgia. Believe me, I understand the passion around this issue. I work with thousands of physicians, and I have many of them that I consider to be close personal friends. There is no one who's more pro-physician than me. Doctors are and will continue to be the indispensable leaders of how we care for patients. However, I sincerely believe that it is imperative that Georgia becomes more open to changes that need to be made. Others have already led the way on this issue, and we must catch up. The shortage of clinical talent is massive and it's nationwide. We must realize that we are competing for talent on a national level. The physicians and advanced practice professionals that we desperately need to bring to and keep in our state are evaluating Georgia against their other options across the country. And they're increasingly finding the legal and regulatory environment here lacking. As a native Georgian and a lover of our great state, it pains me to say this, but we are way behind on these issues, and they are harming our ability to take care of all the wonderful people that live here, especially those in our rural or less affluent areas. Time is of the essence, and Georgia must step up to these challenges. thank you for your time today. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's important we have these committees that we have good, honest dialogue, and I appreciate the fact that you came here telling us something that people need to hear. And I know we've had some discussions about legal reform as well as scope of practice in the past, but this is the time we must act. If you look forward, Shane, to 5 or 10 years from now, if we were to adjust scope of practice to allow nurses, nurse practitioners, et cetera, in order to move up to be similar to other states, I know that will help kind of our short-term solution. What are your thoughts for how we'll get more people in the healthcare business in general, really starting from, the K through 12 education, or even if it's a job career change?
Yeah, I think, my comments were around advanced practice professionals in general, but this concept of, we talk about allowing people to practice at the top of their license, right? We have to think about this throughout the care delivery system. Whether you're thinking about mental health care, which is a huge crisis, and all the way down in conversation earlier of thinking about the way that we think about our vocational nurses, our practical nurses, all the way. We have to rethink the way that we deliver care, and I think the job of regulators is to allow and give the flexibility of the innovators in healthcare to be able to do that. And this is why I start with we can't train enough physicians to treat patients the way we have historically. Like, it just can't be done. And you have to start with that understanding to realize the impetus to rethink this all the way down. And so to answer your question specifically, I think as we create more avenues for people to enter healthcare in a way that allows them to engage with patients, but isn't requiring years and years of medical school and some of these other very advanced degrees, it creates opportunities that people all across the state can see, this is a way I can be in healthcare. One of the things I hear from especially young people that come to work for us all the time, the reason they want to come work for us is because they were attracted to the idea of healthcare because it's something they can do in their lives that helps other people. The opportunity to create a pathway for someone to be able to treat patients and to be able to take care of people in a way that is more approachable educationally, I think attracts tremendous amount of workforce to healthcare in general.
Excellent. Other questions? Senator Beach.
Thank you, Shane, for being here. 2 questions. What state does it best? I mean, as you compete with other states, I know you recruit physicians and place them all over the country. What state are doctors wanting to go to, if you will? Is there a state that's...
So if someone works in all 50 states, I have to be a little bit careful about how I answer that question. I will say, though, that as you look at the 2 different topics, as I said, more than half the states have addressed their scope of practice laws, specifically around advanced practice professionals, and a lot of them do it slightly differently. And so, there are some that I think have been very innovative in this, that could point to. I think Arizona and some other places like that have done some really interesting things. I will say, especially as we kind of think about our neighborhood, some of the laws that have been passed recently by the state of Florida have really gotten a lot of attention by doctors. And obviously you have to see kind of how those play out and that sort of thing. But I think what we hear from doctors is when they see states who are focusing on this and changing the environment, that becomes very attractive to them. And I think if you look at what Florida has done pretty recently on these topics, is a good one to look at.
All right, my second question is this. What can we do to incentivize doctors to go to rural areas? What can we do if we're recruiting doctors out of Jackson physicians to get them to go to rural Georgia?
I think it's a multifaceted answer. And so I'll give you 2 answers. First of all, virtually every doctor I know and every healthcare worker I know, be it a nurse or anyone who enters this profession, they rarely do it because of financial incentives or, like, people are attracted to this industry because they care for people. So, there's, to go work in a rural area or, some of the areas of our state hard to work on, there has to be a calling there, number one. But number two is that I think the answer, if you're talking about what would attract a physician to go work in there, is the same thing that would say, what would attract you or me to go? I mean, you're asking them to make a decision about their family and where they live. And so, when we talk about development of our rural areas and strengthen our rural areas of the state, which is vitally important, I think all of those things are actually healthcare discussions, right? Because as you can make the community stronger, the resources, like all of that, the economy more vibrant, it attracts people, including a physician who says, like, I want to go work somewhere, I want to take care of people, but I also raising my family. And so, so I think there are great programs, things that the state does with some of the state medical schools of incenting, young doctors especially to go into those communities. I think we double down on that. Those are super important because they get physicians in these areas where they can start building roots. But the big thing is we have to just strengthen those communities.
Can I just follow up one thing? When doctors are looking to relocate, does facilities have a big play in that? I mean, do they want a shiny hospital, or do they want great technology and facilities to go with that? And the reason I'm asking that is we're looking at some changes to our CON, especially when in the rural areas. Is that something that attracts doctors to make sure they have the right facilities and the right tools to do their jobs?
So what makes a physician want to go work somewhere, or really a better way of looking at it is what makes a physician unwilling to go somewhere, is really based on whether they feel like they're going to have the tools and resources to effectively treat patients. And, especially for us, we send a lot of our doctors into rural areas. And I hear these stories of them showing up in places and they go, I have a patient present, I know what I need to do. This facility does not have the tools that I need. It's not about shiny new buildings, although those are nice. It's about, do they have the resources? Do they have the personnel, the support staff there to enable them to effectively treat patients? One, because this is why they became physicians, to take care of people. Two, because if they don't, their license is on the line. If a patient presents and they don't have the resources to take care of them, I mean, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And so it's not so much about like, do we have to have the brand new looking hospital and all that sort of thing? It's about, is this an environment where a doctor can go in and be successful taking care of patients?
Question? You got one right there, Billy. Good.
I was just going to make a statement, a couple of quick things real fast. I think you mentioned about the malpractice insurance. I don't really buy into that as being a deterrent factor. I'm a CPA. Our malpractice insurance is $25,000 a year. So that's the, but I think looking through this panel, I'm probably the only one up here today that lives in rural Georgia. And I think you hit the nail on the head, is that somebody has got to want to go back to a community that is not flourishing. And nobody wants to live in a community that's not a vibrant community. Mm-hmm. We were talking about a community just a few minutes ago. I won't name it, but we were talking about it. You will. But they don't want any growth down there. So for a doctor to go back in those communities, they can't. You want to go where you're welcome. You want to go where you can raise a family and all these type of things. And parts of Georgia are not like, and we got to provide incentives for those doctors to go there. When a guy comes out of school, guy being generic, male or female, comes out of school with $300,000 or $400,000 debt, and then has to set up a practice in a rural community for another $200,000 or $300,000. There's $600,000, $700,000 in the hole to start off with. That's the kind of stuff I think we got to look at too. So thank you for your conversation.
Any other questions for Mr. Jackson?
One more comment. The community he's talking about is where I grew up, folks in Georgia. So we need all the help we can get. But with that, when I go back home, all I see is an abandoned hospital, right? Like it's weeds growing all around it. I mean, so that impression sits with me. And all I'm thinking about is, okay, how do we get medical professionals to come there? But how are we leveraging technology to reach those people in that community as well?
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. And look, it's not all about the hospital, right? I mean, it's not necessarily not necessary to provide care in every community to have a hospital. Like, there's other ways we can solve that. But you bring up a really important point, which is the use of technology, and you know, specifically telemedicine. You know, is a thing where we still have a lot of limits on what we can do there based on reimbursement and law, and creating room on that is really important as well, especially for rural areas.
As a follow-up, Senator Beach, I thought you brought up a really important point about what other states are doing. So I'm going to ask Haley in our Senate Research Office if her team can put together a matrix of all 50 states and where we compare in areas that we can certainly improve on. And if we could, Shane, we'll get back to you to get some more of your wisdom in that as well.
Happy to.
Great. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks
much for your
so much.
testimony
Yep.
today. Appreciate it. All right. Next up, someone who is no stranger to the Senate. He is the Commissioner of Agriculture, Tyler Harper, who served honorably in the Senate for a decade with all of us. So we're very proud of the great work he's doing, and I know he'll talk about it, but we like to brag on the fact that agri is our biggest industry in Georgia. We should never forget that, and we couldn't be more thankful for your leadership and support, Commissioner. We'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is good to be here. I just want to start off by saying thank you for recognizing the importance of our number one industry and giving us an opportunity, or giving me an opportunity on behalf of the industry, just to talk about the issues that we're facing in the workforce the workforce issues we're facing as well, because there are many. But it's great to be back with all of you. Many of you I served with for a number of years. Had the honor of representing the hometown of great folks like Champ Bailey when I served in the Senate. It's always good to see good folks from South Georgia up here. So, Champ, good to see you on this panel. But it's good to be with all of y'all. I think all of you know agriculture is our number one industry. What I don't think we talk about enough, and yet many of you have heard me say this, as I've traveled the state and throughout my tenure in the legislature, is that quite simply that providing the food, the fiber, the shelter, the agricultural industry here in America is a national security concern. And if we look at agriculture through the lens of national security, which I believe we should, we'll ensure that we're enacting the right policies that allows this industry to succeed. Because if agriculture is not successful, our state, our communities, our nation can't be successful. And I know y'all have been talking about rural Georgia just a little bit, and I'll just be honest with you, rural Georgia and the rural economy is dependent upon our number one industry. Agriculture is the backbone of those economies. It's not only is the backbone of our state's economy, but it truly is the backbone of those rural economies. And they are significantly dependent upon agriculture being successful for those communities to continue to thrive, whether it's Folkston or Statesboro, Ocilla, or wherever it's at. But even Atlanta. And I don't think we give the opportunity to intersect of the ways that the agricultural industry impacts the Atlantas, the Macons, the Savannahs, the Columbuses of the world, of the state. And, quite simply, agriculture and the department impact every Georgian every day. And I think most Georgians don't realize that this industry impacts them and that they're reliant on this industry to be successful. So for it to do that, we've got to invest in workforce. We've got to invest in that next generation to allow it to be successful and allow us to remain secure as a nation and allow us to remain secure as a state. We've had these conversations about what are the top issues in agriculture. It's been said the top three issues in agriculture are labor, labor, and labor. And it's true. We do face a lot of headwinds in the agricultural industry, whether you talk about the retail dollar back to the family farm, input costs, increased prices in fertilizer, feed, seed, you name it, trade policies. I mean, we can talk about a lot of things that impact this industry, but if you don't have a labor force, if we don't have the labor needed to allow us to gather those crops, to be able to allow the industry to be successful, all of those other policy issues that we're dealing with are a lot less of a concern. So it's important that we have a vibrant labor and workforce here that allows us to be successful. So just kind of hitting on a couple of issues regarding our labor force. We have a short supply just across the board, whether it's in labor-intensive areas like our fruit and vegetable industries here in the state. that are very manual intensive, or it's a shortage of labor and workforce that have a technical expertise, whether that's a person that can drive a truck, a CDL, if it's a welder. Even veterinarians. We have a shortage of veterinarians across the state, and especially in the ag sector. When you look at the ag sector from a food animal vet perspective, we have a shortage of food animal veterinarians. And I'll be honest with you, this is a concern, especially in relation to the new federal policies that have been just released. For those of you that don't know, you as a farmer, as a producer, across the country now, you are required to get a veterinarian's signature to be able to obtain certain medications to be able to give to your livestock. And that becomes more difficult in a rural area where you don't have a veterinarian to be able to obtain that prescription. And that policy just went into effect a couple of months ago. So those are examples of policies that are impacting industries that cause significant concern when it comes to labor issues. We have an increase in the age of the worker population in the agricultural industry. Also in the migrant worker population, we've seen an increase in the age of the migrant worker population across the country, not only here in the state of Georgia. And that increase in age is a concern because we're not bringing in newer folks on the front end to be able to be involved in this industry. And then a lack of training programs dedicated to high demand agricultural jobs. And that's something I'll talk about a little more in just a second. But then you look at other issues in other areas, whether it's H-2A, and I know a lot of that's federal policy, but the 14% increase that we saw here in the state of Georgia on our H-2A, 14% increase in labor cost on H-2A workers here in the state of Georgia caused a significant concern for our farmers and producers here. The issues with H-2A, the complexity that we see and the cost, and a lot of times there are a lot of reasons we see a lot of folks not using the H-2A program, and if there's ways that we can find to simplify that, and I know that's not necessarily a state policy, but I think it's a holistic part of the workforce issue that we're dealing with in the ag sector, and I think it's important that we point that out. But I think there's a lot of issues, obviously, in the workforce space when it comes to agriculture, regardless of what you're looking at. You can go to the next slide. And talking about workforce and ag, what we've seen over the spectrum, 1954 was the first year that there were more tractors in the field than there were mules. So from 1950s to the early 2000s, we saw a steep decline in labor needs in the agricultural sector, mainly because of innovation and technology. However, since the early 2000s to today, that workforce, those that are in the ag workforce, has pretty well remained stable. That doesn't mean that all the job needs are being met. It just means that the amount of the individuals that are in the industry have remained stable. And at the same time, in that, we've produced more food, more fiber, more shelter. And when you look at where we need to be by 2050, and estimates are we need to be producing twice the amount of food we're producing today by 2050. If we're going to do that, we've got to have more help. We've got to have more labor. We've got to have more individuals involved in the agricultural industry, and we've got to find ways to encourage that. The other chart that you'll see there is relation to the age. You'll see that U.S. farm workers here have pretty well remained steady in average age, but as we've brought on more and more migrant labor, that age has tended to slowly increase, which has caused the age of our farm workers overall to increase. You can go to the next slide. I don't have a clicker up here. I actually just got back last week from a week-long conference with my colleagues from across the country at the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, and we had an awesome opportunity to get together and gather and speak. And I just wanted to bring up a point, because one of the policy initiatives that we passed while we were together last week, which I think is important for this particular committee and what the work you're doing, it's obviously it's a focus of all of us in the ag space and all of us ag commissioners, directors, and secretaries from across the country, that we believe that an investment in apprenticeships programs and agricultural literacy and other areas to help ensure that we have future agricultural workforces that are able to go to work and allow this industry to succeed. But we have done some stuff here in the state of Georgia, and I think it's important to point that out. You know, Senator John Wilkinson, former Senator Wilkinson, many years ago, or a couple of years ago, championed the initiative to bring the agricultural education programs into the K-5 classroom, which I think has been remarkably successful in our state. So we're the first state in the union to offer agricultural education curriculum from kindergarten to 12th grade, which I think is awesome. We've invested in high-demand career initiatives. Welding is part of that, right? And other areas that we've deemed as a state that are important. We've done some of that. But I think there's opportunity to do more. And I think there's ways that we can, you can go to the next slide, we can continue to invest in this industry to allow agriculture and allow our #1 industry to be successful. I think we've got to continue investing in opportunities in our primary, secondary, technical, our universities, our graduate programs across the state, and continue to find ways to develop new curriculum regarding to this new generation of agriculture, right? Especially where we're seeing ourselves go in this industry. I think there's another way in relation specifically to one area. Many of you are probably familiar with the Georgia Veterinary Education Loan Repayment Program that we actually oversee at the Department of Agriculture. I think if we increase funding for that program, and maybe even look at expanding those opportunities to vet techs, and ensuring that we're increasing those opportunities, just like Mr. Jackson was mentioning about doctors and APRNs, and in the veterinary world, you have veterinarians and you have vet techs. And so there may be some opportunities where we can have discussions about that and see what that looks like and how we can ensure that we have the needed workforce, especially when it comes to our veterinary industry or our veterinary workforce across the state. And that may be some opportunities to look at. I think if we look at our technical colleges, and I know what I mentioned Senator Wilkinson a second ago, but now President Wilkinson at North Georgia Technical College, and you know they have an ag program there on site, and I think they've done a wonderful job. And what he's doing, obviously, his background in the ag industry has allowed them to really invest in that, to provide some hands-on learning to his students. But I think if there's ways that we can do that from a more specific and more tailored perspective. In other words, if we could tailor those, utilize our universities and our technical systems and even our high schools to tailor educational opportunities in those parts of the state where those agricultural industries exist. So, you know, in South Georgia, we're real row crop heavy. We do have some livestock, but you get in North Georgia, it's real poultry heavy. And I'll have to tell you, Gilmer County High School, I was just there about 2 weeks ago. They're the first high school in the nation to have a hands-on learning poultry facility where they're going to teach their high school ag students all about the poultry industry, and they're going to utilize a poultry house on their high school that it hadn't opened yet. It's almost finished. They're going to do the grand opening here in a couple of weeks, but it's a partnership with the local poultry industry there in the community, and they're going to have an observation room. They're going to teach these kids all about the poultry industry and what it takes to raise poultry. Those are examples where we as a state can partner with our K-12 institutions, our technical colleges, our universities, and provide those experiences, those hands-on opportunities, and give people the understanding that, well, number one, in agriculture, it's more than cows, plows, and sows. But also, secondly, that there are opportunities in this industry that most folks don't even know exist. And I think it's imperative, and that's part of what I've done, and one of the things that I've been talking about since when I was running for office and now even in office, is we've got to invest in the next generation, whether it's in human capital or in technology. And if we don't do that, I think we're missing the boat. We can take opportunities. I know that's a point up here of the existing pipeline. I know our ag education programs, our 4-H and FFA programs are phenomenal. But we've got to allow those kids to understand that there are opportunities. But we also need to continue to invest in our research institutions, both the University of Georgia, Fort Valley State, and the work that they do and our land grants do in investing in new innovative technology. Because we can utilize technology to help us in this industry, to help us with the workforce problems. I know Mr. Jackson kind of mentioned that as well from a healthcare perspective, but we can do it in agriculture as well. Automation, drones. But if we do that, we got to have people that know how to operate a drone. So, you know, those are, you know, when we look at this and providing those opportunities is you know, if we had the ability to teach folks how to operate a drone from the perspective of agricultural purposes, right? The utilization of AI. Now, when I say AI in the ag industry, you have to understand that a lot of people in the ag world know that there are two versions of AI, and it confuses a lot of folks sometimes. So in this case, I'm not talking about artificial insemination like we do in livestock. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, right? So in agriculture, there are two versions of AI, but with the advancement of artificial intelligence and what we're seeing, the utilization of that in agriculture is phenomenal. But what it's causing, though, is especially in agriculture, more so than any other field, is two extremes. Because we still have the need for the labor, the labor from a perspective of field crops and harvesting, especially fruit and vegetables. But then you get on the complete opposite end where we need that real technical expertise and that knowledge from the ability to utilize precision agriculture and artificial intelligence and other things. So in agriculture, there's this wide breadth of needs when it comes to workforce, and I think we need to ensure that we're covering all of that. And I know I mentioned H-2A just briefly a minute ago. I think modernization of the H-2A program, which none of y'all unfortunately have any ability to change, we've got to continue, I think, to work with our partners on the federal level to ensure the H-2A program is worthwhile and it continues to be cost effective and less complex to allow us to continue to receive that migrant labor that we depend on and make it in a way that it makes more sense. I do think on the state level, though, there may be some opportunity for myself and my counterpart, Bruce Thompson, at our State Department of Labor, that maybe there might be some opportunity for he and I to work together in that particular arena, and those are some opportunities that he and I may explore as we move forward in helping ensure that our farmers and producers understand the exact resources that they have across the board. I'll close out by just saying, you know, look, I want to start off again by saying thank you for understanding the importance of agriculture to our state. It is vitally important to our state's economy. 1 in 7 Georgians are employed in this industry. Over 400,000 are employed in this $73 billion industry that impacts our state every single day. And it's vital that we allow this industry to succeed. You know, we've been named the best state for business 9 years in a row, but we can't be the best state for business if the #1 industry isn't successful. And it's vital that we allow this industry to be successful to allow our state to be successful. And a lot of that has to do with the labor issues that we're facing. So I look forward to working with each of you in my capacity to ensure that we give the needed workforce, the needed labor, the needed opportunities that are available to allow this industry to continue to succeed. So thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions if you got any.
Thank you, Commissioner. As always, you brought up so many important points, and I also know that you've been crisscrossing the state. So thank you for making this a priority in your schedule, which I know is very busy. You know, you mentioned a lot of great things. Specifically, though, the one with, I think it was Gilmer County doing the poultry area. You know, I know some schools have started this, but I think anytime schools are trying to put together gardens where they're growing vegetables, you know, flowers, whatever they're planting, trees, is a huge difference, right? Because, you know, some of us when we grew up, you know, had that in our backyard and others did not. So while we can't govern those 181 school districts directly in everything that they do, this might be an area that we can highlight and encourage. It would be great for every elementary, middle, and high school to be doing that. I can't think of a good reason why they wouldn't want to do that. and be a part of the community. So maybe after we get the Gilmer County stuff out there, we can use it to blast it across the state.
Well, to that point, Senator Alvarez, Mr. Chairman, I think there are a number of schools that are doing that, but I think we do have the opportunity to expand it a lot greater than where it is. I'll give you an example in the metro part of the state, at Archer High School in Gwinnett County. They have they've done a really great job of introducing agriculture to their students there, and they have gotten interested, and especially interested from the perspective of the more precision agricultural side of the spectrum when it comes to agriculture. They have a garden, and I think they've done a phenomenal job in helping that, and that's some of those conversations that I think we've got to have, and even from my position, have to have with school boards and school systems and school superintendents, to ensure that they're comfortable in knowing that agriculture can be part of their curriculum, and regardless of whether you're in Atlanta or in rural South Georgia, like where I grew up, that agricultural opportunities exist, and that it can be a phenomenal part of your curriculum in your school, and I think there's opportunities there for us to do exactly what you said, and building on those to allow it to be successful.
That's great. Senator Hickman, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Two quick questions, or two questions. First of all, I think it'd be good if you would elaborate a little bit more on H2 and H2B, so the audience understands that. Other question I'd have, I won't say I've always had a problem. I've had a problem for a long time since I've got horses. I've had a problem for a long time with the Georgia Vet School having so many out-of-state kids in our vet program instead of our own program. How do we, in order to help your veterinarians that you need and we need for Georgia, how do we expand that program? I know that's something that's been going on forever and ever. Some agreement probably 40 years ago between South Carolina and Georgia, and I know we actually have foreign students at the University of Vet School. How does all that, how do we change that, or how do we work with that and make it better?
So I think it's so two questions, H2A and vets. I'll try to hit both of them really quick. Start on the vet side. Our to your point, veterinary shortage is a real thing. It's across the board. It's not just in food animal vet, but from an agricultural perspective, obviously, the food animal vet shortage is a deep concern, especially when you're a producer and you need to get a vet there to see after your livestock as soon as possible, and ensuring that we have those vets that are willing to go to the more rural parts of the state. I'll just be honest with you, the veterinary world y'all have already been having this conversation about getting doctors to go to rural Georgia. It's that same situation in the veterinary workforce as well, because it's a lot less, unfortunately, it's a lot less appealing to go to a more rural part of the state and be a food animal vet than it is to go to a more affluent part of the state, like a Savannah or a Columbus or a Macon or Atlanta, and be a companion animal veterinarian. There is a shortage there as well, so but we're seeing that shortage across the board, and especially on the food animal side. So I think it's continued conversation with the vet school, and the dean, Dean Nolan, and I have actually opened up lines of communication. She and I have been communicating on how we can partner to ensure that we're expanding those veterinary opportunities to get more veterinarians across the board and get them out, and especially in rural Georgia, in the ag industry, to ensure that we have the needed vets that we need to allow that to be successful. So it's those conversations, and we're having those. And I think the other thing is the chancellor of the university system is a veterinarian, and he understands that, I think, as much as anyone. And I think it's important that we continue those dialogues and those conversations. In regards to H2A, H2B, we're very reliant on those programs here, not only in the state but across the country, to ensure that we're providing and have the access to the needed workforce to be able to allow our industries to thrive. Agriculture is obviously chiefly dependent upon H2A and the H2A program. I kind of talked about it already, but the complexity and the cost of those programs are pretty significant. And this is really a federal fix, and it's going to take our friends in Congress to address some of these. But I think there's some things that we can work on, and I think on the federal level, if the department, I think the Department of Labor needs to work on finding ways to be a little more transparent in regards to the wage increases, because those happen. A lot of times, you know, farmers are working on their budgets now for next year. Well, that wage increase happens in December. It goes into effect in January, and they already have an H-2A contract. Well, even though they've already planned for one, they automatically get an increase unbeknownst to them. And so I think if we can help them be a little more, help them plan for those kind of things and find ways to be a little more effective in that arena will help. But I think on the state level, there, like I mentioned earlier, there may be some ways that Commissioner Thompson and I can work together to help in some of this. But a lot of the issues that we're facing in H-2A are going to be addressed on the federal level, and we're willing to have those conversations, and we already have. I led a delegation to D.C. earlier this year to talk specifically about those and other issues, and I think we had a really good meeting and some really good conversations about ways that we can make H-2A more effective to allow us to get the needed labor that we need. But we need to continue to focus on our folks here at home too, to give them the hopefully the drive and the willingness and the passion to go in this industry to allow our ag industry to continue to be successful. And we talked about that. We've been talking about that all morning, even expanding on what Senator Albers mentioned, and those opportunities in our K-12 classrooms gives us the ability to do that.
I got one. So there's a lot of corporations involved in this process, from the moment you put a seed in the ground to Publix, where I buy my groceries,
Yep.
right? So so from the tractor makers, Publixes of the world, how do they play a role, like, in fostering a better ag industry? Like, I mean, what do they do?
So you're right. In the ag industry, from beginning to end, seed to shirt, farm to fork, whatever you want to call it, there are a ton of people involved in that aspect. It is a huge industry with many people involved, many hands in the supply chain, so to speak. I think you know, we mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it with Gilmer County with the program they have there with their poultry facility. Industry has come in and partnered with the school system to build that facility at Gilmer County High School in partnership with the local school system. I think the ways industries across the board, whether it's a seed company or a warehouse or a Kroger or a Publix, I think the ways that they can help us is partnering with our educational institutions and finding ways to help us ensure that we have that pipeline in place, and ensuring that you know, obviously they're going to be interested in their particular area because that's what impacts them as a company. But I think if we encourage them and find ways to give them maybe even an incentive to get involved and be a partner with our K-12 systems and our technical and universities across the state, that will help ensure that we are investing in that pipeline that we need to have the workforce we need to allow this industry to be successful.
And one final question from Senator Estevez.
Yep. Commissioner, thank you so much for being here and for your comments, and particularly around highlighting the exposure piece to K through 12 students. That's important because in addition to, like you said, knowing that the garden and how that plays with agriculture, AI, the right AI, the one thinking, and how drones and all this technology plays into agriculture, exposes them and inspires them to be involved in the industry. But there's a mix here. Can you talk about the percentage of immigrants that are working in the fields? And I saw the chart about the age going up for those foreign-born workers, but also talk about how there's a delicate balance between trying to cultivate our talent within Georgia, but also not interfere and really deter workers from working in Georgia who are foreign-born, because we've also seen negative impacts in other states from some of the stuff that states have done.
So So first off, I think it's a lot of, you mentioned perception, and I do say this a lot. I think people tend to believe that agriculture is cows, plows, and sows, right? And I think there's this perception across the board, regardless of where you are, especially today, that when people think of agriculture, I think they think of the 1950s version of agriculture, and that's not where we are. You know, my grandfather plowed behind a mule on our farm that I grew up on. It's been in my family for 7 generations. But today, that same farm that my grandfather plowed behind a mule on, we utilize a tractor that drives itself with planters that cut themselves off, with sprayers that cut themselves on and off, that seek out. Actually, we have sprayers today that seek out specific weeds and will only cut on if they see that specific weed, and that is it. And the innovation that we have in technology is phenomenal. We have irrigation systems that will cut themselves on and off, but not only that, they will only apply so much water dependent upon what the soil moisture sensor says in that specific part of the field. And if it says it only needs 0.2 of an inch here, but 0.5 here, that's what it will do. So the innovation in technology that we have seen in agriculture just in the last 20 years is phenomenal. But it takes a technical expertise to be able to operate that equipment, right? The tractor driver from 25 years ago is a different tractor driver today, because when you get in a cab of a tractor, it's really, you're operating a computer. Tractors today have thousands and thousands and lines of computer code. That Massey Ferguson 135 that I learned how to drive on has 0 lines of computer code on it, right? So it's a different level of expertise. So it's not only in the U.S. born, it's also in the migrant labor population, because in some cases we need those individuals that have some technical expertise to be able to drive that equipment too, or operate that equipment. And whether it's in agriculture or it's in row crops or in livestock, regardless of what the area is, it's significantly changed. And I think that's a point worth pointing out, so that way we can give folks a reason to be encouraged to go in this industry. And I think we've done a lot of good work of that in our state, but I think we can build on those efforts to ensure that we're doing that. And I'll get you the numbers on the specifics on migrant labor. I don't have those sitting in front of me. I kind of have them off the top of my head, but I'd rather give you a more accurate number. I'll work to get you those numbers on what that looks like on the workforce split, so to speak, to ensure that I have that correct number.
And we got one
All right.
final, Senator Beach.
Commissioner, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
We miss you in the Senate, but we're glad you're where you're at. Last meeting, I talked a little bit about simulators that we put in 15 high schools for the C.W. Matthews and the ER, so the construction, heavy road construction industry. They've hired 300 people because of those simulators. Does John Deere or some of those companies have simulators? Should we be investing in that in some in high schools to get kids trained on this equipment you're talking about?
So yeah, I mean, some of the larger equipment manufacturers, John Deere, for example, they do have simulator-based programs that they can utilize for that particular purpose. But we don't really have that in any of our school systems, right, that I know of. And so there is some opportunity there to do that, to be able to teach those precision ag methods and be able to learn what it's like to utilize that equipment, because you can definitely do it in a simulation-based environment. So that's definitely an area of opportunity for us, not only in equipment, but also we could use simulation-based environments to teach almost all aspects of agriculture. We see today, just like like they're doing in medicine, where they're using simulation to teach doctors and nurses. We're doing the same thing with in agriculture, especially in livestock. We're utilizing simulated equipment to teach students about how to properly treat livestock and veterinarians in those ways. But I think there's definitely opportunity there to expand on the utilization of simulation to allow us to teach our young men and women.
Well, I would just tell you, it's been very, very successful in the construction industry and hiring young people into that industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, thank you for spending so much time with us today, our most important and largest industry, and thank you for your leadership and your great work.
Senator Albers, Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. I hate to slip out. I got to get back to Atlanta for some other meetings, but I appreciate your interest in this, obviously, especially from an agricultural perspective. And if y'all have any questions of me, please feel free to reach out to me or my team. We're here to serve. Y'all keep plowing. We'll see you soon. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, next up, we're going to have a little tag team from Dr. Sean Little and Gail Mackey, if you want to both come on down. And we spent a little extra time because of the size and importance of agriculture. We'll see if we can't catch up a little.
All right, perfect. Hi, thank you. So my name is Sean Little. I appreciate the time. From having served on a commission before, I understand the value and importance of the time. Senator Albers, thank you. Always very gracious, and I appreciate it. So I'm here actually representing the Georgia Nursing Coalition of Nursing Leadership Coalition. It's about 5 or 6 different nursing organizations put together, so no pressure on me to get their words right. So it's the Georgia Nurses Association. I represent the deans and directors for the academic institutions, as well as the nurse educators, as well as advanced practice. And I don't know if Shane is still in here, the gentleman from Jackson. Piggyback on everything he said, he took 5 minutes out of my presentation, so that'll save us time right there. So first of all, with a show of hands, because I am an educator, so I'm involving everybody, and if you don't participate, I will point at you. How many of you understand that there's a nursing shortage? This will save us time as well. Good, that's 5 minutes out of my presentation. Yes, there is a nursing shortage for those of us that haven't seen that. It is in your yellow folder. But I do want to give you some statistics in relation to Georgia specifically, right? So in Georgia, right now, we are the 42nd best place to work for nurses. The 43rd best place for working mothers. A lot of our nursing profession are female, so that does impact us as well. Georgia will be they will have a 21% shortage within this state. So that means we're not meeting our healthcare needs. Just nurses. That's not talking about advanced practice. That's not talking about nurse assistants. That's not talking about your supportive staff. Without your supportive staff, the nurses can't do their primary job, right? That includes housekeeping and all of that. During COVID, we lost 100,000 nurses. That's just during the peak COVID. That's not the aftermath of COVID, right? So, according to the Bureau of Health and Workforce, Georgia is the 6th in the nation for the overall shortage. With that said, yes, we have a shortage, and yes, it is going to impact Georgia, right? So I want to focus on solution, because we've had a lot of great discussion, and we've narrowed it down to 3 major buckets. I'm only going to touch on part of it. One is pipeline, which we've heard in here today as well. One is our educational institution, and the other is keeping our existing workforce. Let's not lose what we have, but let's start with pipeline, right? I'm not about throwing away money. I'm a very frugal person. So we already have programs in place. We have dual enrollment. We have Quick Start. We have these programs in place, but let's look at how we're using them. Is there a way for us to use them more effectively? Is there a way for us to monitor the outcomes and to see if the financial support we're putting into the programs is being effective, right? We also have to think about what is that population. Anybody in here have high schoolers? I have a young adult, a 22-year-old. She's going to kill me for saying this. She'll never see this, but we're good. We had a very engaging conversation in our living room this week, and just for record, she is an expert helium administrator, specifically latex and Mylar. She works at Party City. And she shared with me that why would young people want to go and spend time and energy and effort in a work environment in which you are gonna feel unhealthy, and I can go be an influencer, or I can be an entrepreneur? Why would I spend my money, time, and effort in going to school that I'm gonna have debt for later when I can make almost the same amount of money in a less stressful job? Think about nursing assistants in McDonald's. Pay is equivalent, right? You get fries wrong, nobody dies. Unless they're allergic, that's a whole different conversation. But with that said, I need my workforce and my young generation to find pride in what they're doing and energy to be able to do that. So we need to think about that generation. There are TikTok, social media, generation coming out of high school. We cannot approach workforce like we did with our generation or prior generations. These folks are motivated by money, but they want experience. They want to feel like they're making a difference. How can you make a difference? We just had great agriculture. How can you make a difference? You're feeding people. If I'm in healthcare, how can I make a difference? I'm saving people's lives. I'm making them healthier. So we have to tap into that. We can do that through dual enrollment. We can do that through Quick Start with our technical systems. We can do that with partnerships in primary and secondary school where they have access to healthcare providers as examples. Bring back the school nurses to where students can see those as examples of what they can be when they grow up. Have internships, apprenticeships within school for all areas of healthcare so that we can all see the benefits and they can experience that. The question was asked about simulators. Okay, that can be a little expensive. Virtual reality isn't. You can get a mask, virtual reality, and see what it's like to take care of a patient. You can get that experience, see what the technology is involving you. We want to also think about think tanks. Is there a way for us to set up a think tank where we can look at current initiatives, current technology, and how can we expand outside of that? Rural Georgia is a real area that needs real support. We can do virtual support and a lot of learning opportunities there through our university system, through our technical system as well. The school doesn't have to necessarily be located there. If I take a young person out of that rural area and bring them to a metropolitan area, what's the probability of them going back? Train them where they are. Work in partnership with the facilities that are there. Work in partnership with the educational institutions. There is technology available for that. We can do that. The rural areas in Georgia are hit hardest by the nursing shortage. The other part to that is we want to strengthen our educational programs already here. We have a lot of great nursing programs, a lot. Our top producers of nurses are private institutions. We can use that to our strength. When we think about limited space in clinical, it's easy to say, enroll more students. Sure, we'll do that. There's a nursing faculty shortage as well, right? There's a clinical space shortage as well. So some of the things that we can look at are how can legislation support our hospitals in providing them the opportunity to have employees whose whole job is to place students. As an educator, I forgot to mention that, by the way, I'm an educator. As an educator, I have to place 600 to 800 students in clinical every 8 weeks. Every 8 weeks, 800 students in clinical. That requires Northside, Grady, Piedmont. It requires all of my partners to be able to help me place them, which takes their time, which takes their employees, takes their nurses to train. So what would be great is if we had some legislative support for those facilities and helping us with that. That includes maybe some tax initiatives for our preceptors, for our advanced practice. The other part to that is retaining our current workforce. I am so grateful for Governor Kemp for signing the workplace violence initiative that we had. That is very helpful. Nurses want to feel safe, not just physically, but in reference to their license. So they want to be able to go to work, practice to their scope, and feel safe, have the supplies that they need. Safe staffing. We're not asking for ratios. I want to make sure that's on the record, in the minutes, on the notes, and recorded. We're not asking for ratios. We're asking for safe staffing. That means if I'm coming in to take care of a patient, I have the resources and tools that I need to be able to do it. I have the support staff in order to be able to help support my patient care. And I have a voice and say in how many patients I'm providing care for that day. So, and I apologize, I don't have my slides, so I'm winging it a little bit on this one. I just want to make sure I got some of my main areas. The other thought in reference to our current workforce and attracting new workforce, if we approached healthcare and healthcare workforce similar to the movie industry, think of what difference that would make in our state as well, right? If we want businesses to come into the state, they need to have a healthcare system to bring their employees to. It's a high economical revenue producing workforce, right? We have a lot of items in House Bill 520 that are up. As an overarching recap, what I'm going to ask for is to understand that many organizations are missing workforce. It's not just healthcare. The initiatives that I'm putting forward are dual enrollment, quick start, primary, secondary instruction, teaching our students in primary and secondary education sciences, teach them math. In Savannah, you guys heard a lot about soft skills. We need that as well. Find the passion in our young people and bring that forward to healthcare through experiences. And I can't forget our advanced care practices, scope. Again, Shane said that for me. I highlighted through a lot of it. Please take the time to look at the information that was provided in the folder as well as the PowerPoints that were presented. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. We're going to let Gail talk, and they'll do questions at the end. So Gail, go ahead and please present.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gail Mackey. I represent licensed professional counselors. I'm the executive director. I'm happy to say that our chapter is the largest state chapter in the United States for mental health professionals. For those that don't have a therapist right now, I have 9,000 members. I can find you someone right away. I am not a therapist. I'm so excited to be here to be able to talk about a couple of great things. First of all, when I came on board to be the executive director of the Licensed Professional Counselors Association, every national event I went to, Georgia was 48, 47, 46. We were not asked to speak on panels. We were not really invited. I can be a very pushy, obnoxious person. I had 2 teenagers, so I know if you hold your breath, I don't care if you turn blue. I'm going to show up and you're going to listen to me. So we've come a long way. I want to thank the senators right now. Georgia was the first state in the United States to pass the Professional Counseling Compact Law. In less than 2 years, 21 sister states have signed on. By this coming spring or summer, you will be able to have access to therapists in other states. But that may sound like competition coming into Georgia. It's not at all. Georgia's licensed professional counselors are seeked out all over the United States. And they also travel to different states. They will not have to get licensed in so many states, and they will be able to provide more services. Super excited at that. We want to thank our senators so much for passing that. In the green folder there, I have very specific what our wants are, but I have one other announcement. It's a big surprise. We've been working on it for a while. We're looking as an organization at tracks. What I'm hearing here, K through 12, I'm hearing different degree levels, different tracks. What we don't have in the United States is a track for mental health professionals. Most of the mental health professionals that I deal with, again, we have 9,000 members out of about 10,000 licensees, we hear this is 3rd, 4th, and 5th career. We need a track. So we're working with a couple of universities to do, again, make Georgia first in the United States to have a bachelor's level in clinical mental health. So we're super excited about it. We'll have more information about it, but I think Georgia needs to be #1 again, and this would be something that our universities are super excited about. We would like to go ahead and move people along. Social workers have bachelor's level, master's level, PhD. Now, clinical mental health professionals will have the same. So I'm sure you have lots of questions. I'll step aside, have lots more information in the green folders. Thank you.
Gail, thank you. That is an excellent announcement. We do want to lead the way there, and I think we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years, as you mentioned, passing important legislation. It certainly was one of the crown jewels of our late House Speaker, David Ralston, for House Bill 1013. Committee members, questions for either, I'll let Billy Hickman go first.
Yeah, thank y'all for the presentation. I think sometimes we forget about, and I hadn't thought
retired or may have retired a long time ago and want to come back potentially if they have the proper appropriate incentives to return. Have you seen anything around that?
Yeah, one of the recommendations that I have in my presentation is looking at your pipeline and getting that untapped middle-aged adult, right? You have adults that maybe it's their second career, maybe this is something they've always wanted to do. So affording that opportunity for them to enter the educational system is very valid. I know we've been calling a lot of our retired friends to come in and do, labs or, small things. The challenge that we have, and it's from a Board of Nursing perspective, it's a 1 to 25 faculty to student ratio requirement for the board of full-time colleagues. So you can't count part-time. So when you're looking at bringing in retired to help with education, it doesn't meet a Board of Nursing requirement from a numbers perspective, but it does help our students because they can give you a historical perspective to it. What the data is showing right now is that brand new nurses, 18% of them are leaving the profession within the first 12 months. And a lot of that is because when they get into the workforce, they have brand new nurses training them that are still trying to build up their resiliency. And they go in immediately to areas that don't have enough staff to be able to support their learning. And it is, to the Senator's point, it is a growth issue, right? But we also have to incentivize our nurses to stay at the bedside. Part of that is what we've done to ourselves, advanced practice, get a higher degree. Now I'm going to teach. That means I've moved nurses away from the bedside. I need to replace them. I need to make that something that our high school and our young adults want to go and back and do. And in order to do that, we need to incentivize them to come back in, make it easier to get into school, make it easier to pay back their loans, make it easier to pay for it in the first place. Those are the things that we're looking for. Great question, thank you.
Other questions from the committee members?
Yeah, one more. So I think about primary caregivers. Like, if I have an older person living with me, I'm the nurse, right?
Yep.
And we see people burdened with that all the time. How much do y'all partner or empower those that are watching a family member constantly? They can't afford the health care. They can't afford nurses to come in. Those things do exist. So how much do you identify that and help those people that are doing those things? That's real work. So, and we all know that turns into a health problem for that primary caregiver because it's a burden that they really shouldn't have to take on, but they do it because of love and, support of their family. So I know it's happening in abundance, especially where I'm from. So what do you do to support those type of people?
So that is where we're looking at the overall healthcare support system. Yeah. So, for example, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's. My father-in-law had to stay with her 24/7. Yeah. So that meant that he wasn't able to work. That meant he wasn't able to go grocery shopping. He wasn't able to do those things. And he relied on people within the community. So when you're talking about healthcare has moved out of the hospitals where it used to be, now we're looking more at community health. So how can we encourage folks to think outside the box of where we've always taught before? We've always taught at a nursing school you had to go straight into the hospital. That's not the case. My next job, and we were talking about this somewhere earlier, at cruise ship nurse, I'm going to give out Dramamine. That's my next job. But you can go into schools, you can go into the community, you can be a public health nurse, you can support our folks within the public. Telenursing, telehealth, that is something that we need to tap into more, and that was presented earlier with Shane's presentation as well. That's a great opportunity. They don't even have to leave the home, and I can support them. From a state perspective, how that can be supported, especially in rural health, Wi-Fi. Something as simple and basic as internet. How can we get internet to the rural areas?
One final question, so we'll stay on track here.
Yep, and this is just a quick comment related to agriculture, the perception of what's possible, scope of practice and discussions that I've been having with folks. There's also a perception issue. The reality is that advanced practice professionals are already doing a lot of things that in practical settings, clinical settings, they're already doing a lot. But the regulatory environment doesn't necessarily allow them to do that here in Georgia, what they're already doing in Georgia and across the country, as we see in this map. So there is a perception issue there.
Yeah, Senator Albers, there's a map in the packet that shows what you were asking for earlier from your
Perfect.
team.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the great presentation. Next, we're going to hear from Kubota. Mary, would you come on down? There you are.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today. Phil Sutton was supposed to be here, and I know he's got some really big shoes to fill, so hopefully I can do that a little bit. One of the great things about being fourth place is basically everybody has said everything that I needed to come up here and say. I mean, I'm sitting over there just shaking my head. And from a manufacturing standpoint, I see how agriculture, healthcare, everything, we all have the same need. I was doing a little bit of research yesterday, and I was looking, just in Hall County, we have approximately 28,000 students enrolled in Hall County. That's an amazing pipeline to tap into. If we can keep them in Georgia, keep them local. But myself and Kubota, we have the position that we don't have a shortage of workers. We truly have a mismatch in regards to career expectations according to what's available. I've had the opportunity, I cut my teeth in manufacturing. I started manufacturing when I was 19 years old, so I've seen the progression over the years. I won't tell how old I am. But there used to be pride in working in a manufacturing environment. There's not so much anymore. As I talk to students in schools, they're wanting to go to a four-year college, yet they don't even know what they want to be. They're going to college to go to college, but they don't know what they want to be. I've had the opportunity to work with manufacturing companies, with Japanese partners, with German partners. The one thing that I see that's different is they start getting their 13, 14, 15-year-old students involved in identifying their career path, and then they start taking efforts to work towards that. Now, I'm not condoning doing anything like that, but I do think that we are missing the mark by not getting out in front of our kids early. The lady that talked in front of me, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but you hit the nail on the head. We're coming up with a TikTok generation. Back in my generation, we were changing inner tubes in our bicycles so that we could go to the park and play kickball. I'm not so sure that my 20-year-old could change an inner tube in a tire now. So it's that technical, that mechanical aptitude that we're missing out on. Let me go back to my notes here. There were one of the pipelines that we feel has been, great for us is work-based learning. Just in the Gainesville-Hall County, there are 800 students enrolled in work-based learning, but only 2 to 5% of those enrolled are in a manufacturing pathway. We've seen success with that manufacturing work-based learning pathway. 20% last year of our students converted to full-time, and we've not lost a single work-based learning employee that has converted to full-time yet. 30% of jobs in the area are in manufacturing, goods, and logistics roles, but only 2 to 5% of our work-based learning students are in that manufacturing pathway. There's a disconnect there. Interns, we focus a lot with our interns, and we bring interns in, and it's great, that in school, they're learning the theory, but we're having to help them understand how to apply that theory. And then we're also, in turn, helping them figure out what they want to do with that engineering degree because they still don't know. As we talk to young adults about college plans, we see an abundance of interest in English and humanities, liberal arts interests. But the question is, where are we going to apply that knowledge? Unless they are truly seeking an educational pathway, what are you going to do with an English degree? My daughter was attending school, and I said, "What do you want to do, baby?" She said, "I want to get a business degree." Why? What are you going to do with it? Find what you like, find a way to make a career out of it. That's the disconnect, I believe. And I'm saying all of this to basically say that I think we need tax money to help us with educational initiatives to get in front of kids at an earlier age, to help them understand what they want to do when they get older. We are truly stuck behind our screens in that TikTok nation, YouTube. Our children want to be, what's the term? Influencers, thank you. You can obviously tell that I'm not involved in all of that. I don't even know how to use all these social media websites, but, how long can you be an influencer? Till the next best thing comes around. I'm not going to share my presentation because I think it's a moot point now. But, Kubota, we are the largest manufacturer in Northeast Georgia. We have 3,600 employees. In 2030, 60% of total sales for Kubota globally are going to come out of the Gainesville and Jefferson area. By 2030, we have to do something to focus on that pipeline, and work-based learning and internships is just not going to do it. Let me go back over here, my slides, I'm all over the place. I did we were pulling some data to see what we could do internally to retain our employees. Over the last 2 years, we have hired 4,000 people each year. There's not a labor shortage. Again, there is a mismatch. There is a skill gap. I ran the numbers again. 60% of our turnover is happening in the first 90 days. That leads me to believe that what people think manufacturing is, in the reality, there's a disconnect there. Again, I think it's getting in front of our students early and teaching them what options they have, and that they don't necessarily have to go to a 4-year degree to earn a great living in Georgia.
Quick question for you on that, Mary. For those folks that are leaving very quickly into their tenure of working there, what do you know off the top of your head what are their top reasons for moving on?
No, because the majority of those 60%, 65%, it's attendance, it's no call, no show, it's just nothing. It's hard to get feedback.
That is a consistent theme that we have heard throughout these meetings, from basic responsibility as well as soft skills.
Yes.
Which, we do have an interest, certainly, we want to push that, and it's something we need to get parents to focus on as well, teach those kids. So, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. Is there anything else you want to mention? Okay, questions for Mary. Ryan, Bernice.
It would strike me that perhaps there's a similarity with the gentleman we heard talk about agriculture. The perception of manufacturing may be stuck in the 50s, and if I think about going into a manufacturing job, I think I'm going to have a monkey wrench, stand next to a conveyor belt, and be tightening something all day. I'm guessing that's not accurate anymore.
That is not accurate.
And similarly, I was struck by him talking about when he learned on a tractor, there were 0 lines of code in the tractor, but now you stand there looking at a spaceship worth of console buttons, right?
That's right.
So I got to believe there's a way to connect the youths, which is so weird for me to say.
I know.
Their idea of, drone, robotics, AI, all these things that are the next wave of technology, to present that as the face of manufacturing in America today, not, tool, monkey wrench, assembly line kind of thing. Have you seen any impact of STEM schools or those sorts of programs that can interest people in your field?
Absolutely, yes. Our engineering group, they go to a lot of, and they actually go and they'll judge a lot of the STEM projects and things like that. Automation is in our future, right? We're not going to be able to employ 50,000 employees with growth. We have to automate, and getting those kids interested in that technology and that AI is going to be key to manufacturing growth.
You're supposed to say the Utes.
The Utes.
That's it.
The two Utes.
Yeah. My cousin Vinny.
Favorite
yes,
movie
that's
of all
right.
time.
Other questions for Mary?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Danielle.
Thanks so much, Mary. And certainly what we heard from you is what we hear from a lot of our manufacturing members, is there is, kind of to Ryan's point, a disconnect in what is perceived as manufacturing. I know you talked a lot about y'all's partnerships existing with work-based learning, but I was wondering if you could share just a little bit more how y'all are working with your K-12 districts to improve that early exposure, because I think that is consistently what we hear is a huge opportunity, but I'd love to see what y'all are started to do, and then any hopes of what you could kind of build in the future.
Absolutely. So I've only been with Kubota for a couple of years, but you know, when I got there, we had about 30 work-based learning students. We understood the need for that program to grow, and we've dedicated personnel solely to the success of work-based learning. We are very involved in the schools. We're constantly scheduling tours for these students to come out to see firsthand what manufacturing is. We go and we speak to the different schools. We're now partnering with Empower to do the same thing here in Jackson County. It's really getting out there, but it's about opening your doors. You know, we can stand up here and we can say all of this, but we have to be willing to put the time and the effort in and to open our doors to show these children what they have in front of them.
Absolutely. Okay, other questions for Mary? Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. And we're going to head next to Georgia Manufacturing Association. Stephanie, come on down. And for the committee members, I know you've got a big stack in front of you. We're trying to make it so you don't have to crane around and look behind you, but all those presentations should be in your
And
your
absolutely, I
stack.
want you to know the binded presentation you have is my 30-minute presentation I usually give, not the
All right.
10-minute one. So you got a lot more detail. But Senator Albers, thank you for the invitation, and committee, thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name's Stephanie Searcy. I'm Director of Workforce Development for the Georgia Association of Manufacturers. And we're the only trade organization in the state solely dedicated to manufacturing, with over 150 manufacturers, suppliers, as well as professional service firms that serve manufacturing directly. We are visible, vocal, and vital on issues that matter most to manufacturers, which includes legislation. Have our VP of Governmental Affairs, Brittany Hull, here today, as well as energy, and then, of course, workforce. So with workforce development, the association itself has really taken a deep dive into this initiative by actually hiring a full-time personnel, thank you, to really solely focus on this. And before I dive into it, I really want to provide some statistics to really kind of paint the landscape right now. We all know workforce is a challenge, right? But let's really see the reality of this situation. So from 22 to 27, manufacturing in Georgia is expected to grow 11%. Okay, so I mean, we are busting out the seams. If you'll go to the next slide, please. However, juxtaposed to that, the availability of manufacturing workers has decreased by 42% since 2018. What I like about this chart right here is, of course, you can see the spikes there. That's COVID years, right? But look, pre-pandemic, we thought we were in a tight labor market then. Look where we are now. So basically what this is saying, that not only if we don't change the way we focus on existing manufacturing, not only may we have a hard time meeting the future needs, we're having a difficult time meeting the existing needs. So to the next slide, please. Here's what the association's doing about it. We're rolling up our sleeves, and because of this deficit that we're in, we're actually going to say, okay, what are some solutions then we can help facilitate? What are some pilot initiatives that we can initiate that have a two-pronged approach, that address the immediate needs, so the needs of here and now, but then also we're facilitating initiatives and solutions that foster those relationships and change the perception of manufacturing, the engagement. So again, what can we do now, and what do we do for the long term? All in all, our main goal with our strategy is to foster a net increase in the available workers with manufacturing skills, both in the here and now and to come. Because right now, the only way we're able to fill jobs in manufacturing is robbing from Peter to pay Paul, right? So we've got to facilitate that net increase. Next slide. So the next few slides, I'm going to share with you some insights that really pertain to some immediate solutions that we're hoping to develop. And the first step that we were able to check off with our workforce strategy plan was the association initiating its first ever workforce needs assessment. Now, the intention behind this assessment was to identify manufacturers' immediate and collective workforce needs across the state, the credentials that they require for these needs, as well as the time frame that they need to fill these needs. And not only that, What are some untapped populations they're willing to consider hiring that they haven't thought of before? Because again, we got to facilitate that net increase in labor participation. So with our workforce needs assessment, we assessed 155 manufacturers. 90 manufacturers submitted complete responses, and those 90 manufacturers represent 70 manufacturing businesses in Georgia. And of those businesses collectively, they employ almost 80,000 jobs, and I can tell you at the time that this assessment was filled out, as of April, over 4,000 of those 80,000 jobs were unfilled. Next slide. So just a very high-level results of these outcomes. So these are the occupations that manufacturers statewide said that they need to focus on now and foresee being a need for the next 3 to 5 years. Entry-level production, of course, followed by technician positions in multi-craft maintenance, industrial, and then mechanical technician. Also, this is a very important question. What time frame, manufacturers, do you need to fill your needs? In under 3 months. So what does that tell us? The solutions that we develop and customize, they will have to be fast track. What does that mean? We're going to have to engage with the technical colleges across the state and their economic development departments to customize training overviews that teach the required credentials to fill these positions. And we're going to aim at marketing to people that have no experience in manufacturing, to enroll them in these fast-track training solutions, to teach the skills and competencies that our manufacturers need to perform these roles successfully. 3 months. So this is why we go back to we've got to have immediate solutions and we've got to have long-term solutions, because a lot of our credit programs, both with the university system and TCSG, can't train them fast enough. So next slide. And this just goes to show you that, hey, manufacturing is more than jobs, they're careers. If you look at each of these occupations we've identified, these are the median hourly wages. This does not include their benefits. So this is actual hourly pay. For entry-level production, we're at almost $18 median hourly wage. And I will share with you, in working with our manufacturers as we're developing the training overviews now, a lot of them are not requiring a high school diploma anymore because they have really got to open the doors wider to tap into new labor participation. Did you know that there are over 800,000 Georgians that do not have a high school diploma? Untapped labor market. So again, this just goes to show you that we're wanting to equip people for not only jobs to fill that are here now, but for careers that are going to be here for quite some time. Next slide. So all I've talked about right now is identifying the need, the approach to take, but again, we have to go back to, well, how are we going to find the people? Because again, we don't want to rob from one manufacturer or other industry sectors to fill a need. We want to foster that net increase. So when we administered our workforce needs assessment, we asked manufacturers, well, what populations are you willing to work with? 40% said they are very and extremely interested in working with a second chance. That means people who are being released back into society after incarceration, or maybe they have a criminal record. We have a portion of our manufacturers that are interested in working seriously with them. We have another portion of manufacturers that are interested in hiring people with no experience in manufacturing and putting them through these member-endorsed solutions. Almost 80% said probably and definitely would do that. We also have about 60% that are interested in hiring Georgians or people with no high school diploma. Again, we have about 20% or so that are interested in working with sponsored employees. So we were talking about migration earlier. That is definitely having a presence in manufacturing as well. Next slide. So right now I've talked with you about all the statewide results that we've seen with our needs assessment. But to really make an impact, to really maybe move the needle a little bit on this, we've got to regionalize this information. So what we've done now is we have broke down the top occupation needs for each region that we have divided and conquered the state, if you will. We have identified 9 regions and are hoping to pilot in 4 or 5 regions fast-track training solutions that are going to meet the immediate top occupation needs of those regions. So what is the need in Northwest Georgia is not going to be the same as in Savannah or the coastal area. Next slide. And so now, where do we go next? So for the rest of this year, we're going to be really developing our training overviews and identifying the time frame it takes to administer those, the credentials required. And then in the January timeframe, we're going to be engaging the stakeholders. That includes, TCSG colleges. That includes working with the Georgia Department of Corrections and working with their transitional centers to train some men and women with the skills needed or that our manufacturers need. But then also we're going to initiate these solutions. And again, they're pilot solutions. So we're saying we don't have the solution to fix all the problems. We're just going to test drive some things to see how they work and what we can learn from that. And hopefully by July, we'll be able to start putting out some reports or some metrics to see if we are moving the needle on this, if we are alleviating the workforce burden. And the whole intent of this workforce strategy plan, and you can go to the next slide, the whole intent is to help inform and educate our stakeholders and legislatures about the resources our existing manufacturers do need. If we're able to put forth to you pilot solutions that did work, how is this something that we can continue doing and sustain for the long haul? So with this last slide, these are just some examples of some innovative pilot solutions we're currently working on. I've already talked with you about how we're going to try to work to create manufacturing's workforce for them, both immediately and long term, but then also minimizing impediments. In our workforce needs assessment, transportation was the #1 impediment manufacturers identified, followed by childcare as well as housing. For childcare, we hope to be able to announce at the end of this month a grant that we were awarded and that we're going to be able to pilot with 14 of our manufacturers to help develop childcare solutions for their employees, whether that be helping to offset the expenses associated with childcare for their employees or helping staff positions at daycare facilities to solely provide childcare to these employees. So these are actual pilot solutions that we hope that we can get tangible, concrete answers out of that help inform us moving forward to help alleviate this burden. Second Chance Toolkit, because this is such a strong interest for our manufacturers, we want to develop a how-to, right? How do you implement second chance hiring? Not only from an HR policy, but how do you change the culture about this internally? What are some training initiatives or programs that your leadership could go through? What are some hiring processes that you could implement or be creative about? But then also learning that how you treat a traditional hire cannot be the same for how you treat someone with second chance. There has to be mentorship. There has to be investment involved. There has to be commitment. And so we want to develop a how-to kit for our manufacturers on how to get this started. What incentives are there for this, et cetera. And then lastly, we're talking about trying to get more in front of the public and students about educating them on what manufacturing is and how cool it is today. We are also working on an initiative now to do just that. The main thing our members want is to have more direct access and connection with students, parents, and adults to change the perception. So we are brainstorming an initiative right now to, lack of better words, I'm not an influencer, but to create a social media platform, if you will, for manufacturing that does all of that. That educates people about, hey, did you know how much you can make in this field? Did you know that you didn't need a 4-year degree? Do you know what the concept of lost income is if you choose to go to a 4-year degree, but you could have been making this much, in manufacturing? But, just really educating the public about that. So that's the end of my presentation. My information is in your slides, but happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a great presentation. I think Senator Hickman mentioned this at our very first meeting of how we are not celebrating the people that are going into, whether it be a trade, a manufacturing, agriculture, going to a technical college versus one that, look, we love our great universities, so they're fantastic and we have a definite need for them, but we need to weigh those equally in the results that they give to both our state as well as the individual. So, are there
Absolutely.
questions for Stephanie? I've got one from Senator Hickman.
I have a statement, I probably have two statements. First of all, in Emmanuel County, the sheriff of Emmanuel County, Jeffrey Brewer, who I've got to know very well, started when he's been in office now 2.5 years, and when he went into office, he started a GED program for people in jail. When I talked to him last Friday, as of last Friday, they've had 37 graduates in 2.5 years come out of that program. And I said, tell me how many people have been back in jail of those 37 graduates? 2. So, and he said the confidence level of these people have just accelerated.
Yep.
One of them told him, he said, I've never accomplished anything in my life, now I've got this. So, education, obviously, a big thing. That's why the Senate was pressed so hard on Senate Bill 211, and the House pressed so hard on House Bill 538. And I just read an article, and I sent it out to some people where Columbia University, that's not South Carolina, Columbia University in New York just fired the person that was head of their teachers' college up there, and because they had not instilled the science of reading. They've been doing the sight work all these years, and they realized the sight words are not making it. That's what House Bill 538 has brought back in, is the phonics of it. And so part of all this is I firmly believe that we've got the people to fill positions. We don't have educated people to fill these positions. And we don't have people that can know how to fill out an application. If you can't read, you can't fill out an application for a job. So there's a lot of things like that that go back to the basics of reading. So, thank you.
You know, and to your point, something else that's very alarming is, so of Georgia's non-institutionalized labor market, 3 million individuals choose not to be participating in the labor force. And I don't know how we go after them. I've asked the question, can we stalk them? You know, but that is just so alarming to me. And if there was some way that we could be creative in tapping into that market, but then also tapping into our incarcerated population, tapping into, you know, high school students that graduate and don't even go on to 4-year schools or post-secondary plans. There's roughly about 20 to 30% of those high school students each year just go into the workforce. How can we catch them, or better yet, how can we better educate the population to make better informed decisions? Yeah, and so, you know, there is populations, there is labor out there. It's if we're going to be willing to not require a high school diploma anymore, because maybe that opens the door for 800,000 Georgians now. Or are we going to look at working with second chance populations? Are we going to look at tapping into sponsored employees more? We really have to think outside the box to meet the needs of now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments and your presentation today. Next, we'll bring up from very own Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Chris, for being amongst us. As we've talked about, being the #1 state to do business means all boats are rowing together, and obviously having the Georgia Chamber help lead the way has been extraordinary. And thank you for having Danielle a part of our committee. We appreciate you graciously allowing some of that time to help us out.
Well, I appreciate that, and thanks for having one of my board members, Champ Bailey, on your committee too, and for listening to one of my great members here, SK Battery, coming up in a few minutes. So we got you surrounded one way or the other. But I do appreciate the opportunity to share a little data, and I think maybe build on what you've heard this morning. This is about I've given this presentation about 237 times, includes the second time today. I'm not lying. Spent an hour and a half with about 50 manufacturing healthcare leaders this morning in Newton County. We usually spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours going through this. I'm going to give you the short version. But I think what's important to understand is a lot of our conversations have been around the needs today. But to understand the systemic issues that we're facing and how we're going to have to deal with this over the next decade. So let's just skip ahead. Let's go next slide. I'm going to skip ahead all of this stuff. You can read it on your own. Skip ahead, keep going. Skip. Stop there. All right. You don't have to look at this. I'm going to make it simple for you. We have 3 issues from a workforce development. All right. Number one, we have a participation problem. You've talked about that today. I want to put that in perspective for you. Number two, you have a preparedness problem from our high school students. And number three, we have, dun, 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 the demographic cliff that's coming. So here's the bad news. For all the manufacturers in the room, they know this. All our healthcare workers know this. This is not going to get any better for the next decade. Pre-COVID, anybody remember pre-COVID? Senator, barely? Brandon, you barely remember it. Here's the numbers. Pre-COVID, for every 3 job openings in Georgia, 1 person looked for a job. June of COVID 2020, 2 people were looking for a job. 1 person was looking for every 2 jobs that were open. Last summer, I had 4 job openings for every 1 person looking. Today, it's 3 to 1, and it will be 3 to 1 for the next decade. This is not going to get better. We have to figure out how to deal with the numbers that we have. Right now in Georgia, as Stephanie just said, 3.2 million Georgians are not working. Let's go to the next slide. Let me just talk quickly about the 3 groups that aren't working and the group that you need to think about how we help get back into the workforce. We've lost 10% of our labor participation in the last 20 years in Georgia. Where are they now? The biggest group, females, leaving the workforce primarily for child care reasons. We have too few child care workers in Georgia, but we also have too few child care facilities. We have a recommendation about how to fix the Georgia child care tax credit that we think would jumpstart and help address that issue. There's also a senior care issue here. Our nursing homes in Georgia are at 75% capacity because we don't have enough nurses. I think my nursing folks ditched out on us. The other issue, though, with women in the workforce, and I think it's really important that we as a society think about this. If you look at the slide here, post-COVID, the industries that lost the most number of workers, they voluntarily quit and left. You can understand tourism, right? We didn't go anywhere, we upskilled. You understand manufacturing, we had some slowdown. But what do healthcare, education, and social services have in common? They're all dominated by women in the workforce. But if you look at healthcare and education in Georgia, the average teacher and the average nurse only works 5 years before they leave the workforce. Burnout, but what's the burnout from? From an educator's standpoint, it's how students treat teachers, but worse, it's how parents treat teachers. Of the 50 teachers of the year in 2017 in America, only 2 are still teaching today. They're being blamed for political decisions, for curriculum decisions, and we've devalued that. The same thing with health care. We talked about a lot of solutions a moment ago from our healthcare friends. My sister's a nurse. My grandma was a nurse. My wife's 2 best friends are nurses. One told us the other day, every week she is spit on, yelled at, or hit. Not by patients, but by family members. As a society, we've got to get to the point where we restore respect and dignity to those career fields because none of us want to teach or take care of our senior parents when they get there. And so when you don't feel respected, you don't go back to work. And so if we want women in the workforce, we've got to respect them, respect the careers that they're in, take care of child care and senior care. The second group that's missing from the workforce right now are those middle-aged men who have outrun their punk coverage and don't have the skills they need to compete in the new job market. Now, a lot of them need to go back, want to go back, but they're too proud to go back to school. And so we're working with the technical colleges and others about how do we make it easier for them online, micro-credentials, anything you can think of to try to get men back into the workforce. The third group, which was just mentioned, are those men and women that aren't working but want to work. And you guys at the General Assembly, I give you credit. You've done a lot of work in this area. There's more to be done, but let me just give you a couple of suggestions here. Number one, you do have second chance offenders. Expunging records, occupational licensure reform helps bring them back into the workforce. Number two is you have men and women with disabilities. They want to work, they're passionate about work, but maybe we need a little more patience, maybe we need a little more wraparound services. We've got those services in Georgia, but we're not doing a good job of connecting them back to the industry sectors that need them. Number three, we have refugees in Georgia. You hire a refugee, it's a 90% retention rate. They will stay with you because they came to America to work. And number three are men and women in the foster care system. And Brandon, I know you care a lot about this group and you work with Rick on it. Wrapping around those young men and women as they come out of the system, getting them into apprenticeships and keeping them in their communities makes a huge, huge difference. And then the third group of folks that aren't working, which will lead me to my next slide, are young men and women just graduated from college. Georgia's unemployment rate's 3.2%. If you're a recent college graduate, it's more like 5.8% in Georgia. So why is that? You're thinking, well, I went and got the degree that I need. You're not prepared to be there. And Danielle and our team have done the research, and we think there's two reasons. Number one, kids don't work anymore. I mean, how many of us had a part-time job after school growing up, right? Summer job, right? Multiple. Not anymore. In America today, 2% of high school students have an internship, 30% have a summer job. That was 50% 20 years ago. 17% work after school. That was 30% 20 years ago. 40% of our high school students graduate never having worked a day in their life. That means they've never been yelled at, had to show up early, cover for somebody, get in trouble for something that your buddy did when he snuck out back. All of those skill sets you learned are not there. This is a huge problem, not just for being ready for the workforce, but being ready for college, for technical college. I hear this from every university that I go and speak at. Now, there are solutions here. In the Midwest, there are high schools that are requiring every graduating senior to have real-world experience. Jerry Moorhead at the University of Georgia just announced that every graduate from the University of Georgia is required to have real-world experience before they get the diploma. Every college in Georgia ought to do that. Every high school in Georgia ought to do that. And it doesn't have to be a full-time job. It can be an apprenticeship, a job shadow, an entrepreneur program, something that gives them skill sets, exposure in the real world. You can do this at the local level. We ought to be doing it at the state level. That's part of the preparedness problem. Some people say, well, Chris, they're not working because instead they're getting their credentials, getting ready for college. That's BS. Here's the truth of it. Georgia high school students, 5% are in work-based learning, only 8.4% are in dual enrollment. We ought to be expanding that dual enrollment. Only 20% are in AP class, and you say, well, listen, my son's a senior in high school. He's going to graduate with 11 AP classes, Dave. Our buddy next door, his friend, just graduated with 12 AP classes, went to UGA. You want to guess how many credits he had? 0. Think about how much further along he'd be if he had dual enrollment during that time. What's even more worrisome for us and our members, our 50,000 members statewide, less than 1% of our high school students are graduating with a technical college credit. And you wonder why they're not going into manufacturing and other things. We're not giving them that credit. And only 8% are getting an industry credential. And the number one industry credential you're getting in Georgia? Microsoft Word. Microsoft does not require Microsoft Word credential. So 40% of our kids never worked a day in their life. 40% only have a high school diploma. There's your preparedness problem right there. And there are low-hanging fruit about how to deal with that. And then the third area, which is the big scary one, if those weren't scary enough, is this demographic cliff that we're facing in 2030. And I'll unpack this really, really quickly, Mr. Chairman, because I know we're behind. Here's the first thing that's going to happen in the next 7 years. The workforce in Georgia will become the most diversified workforce in history. You're ready? All my millennials in the room, we will all be working for you at some time. I appreciate you. 41% of the workforce by 2028 will be millennial, but 31% will be Generation Z. You are not prepared for Gen Z. It's a I didn't mean that in a funny way. I just being honest with y'all. Those of us that have them know. But here's the thing, they're very diverse, and so once they enter the workforce full on, 58% of Georgia's workforce will be female. Let's go back to the issue I just talked about with child care and the other issues. We're going to lock out 60% of our workforce if we don't deal with that. 31% will be black. That will maintain at that level for about 20 years. But 20% will be Hispanic, and that will grow exponentially over the next 20 years. And about 12.5% will be immigrants. It should be 15%. So the workforce is going to look very different than it works today, which requires all of us to recruit differently, think differently, reach out differently, engage differently. Number two, do you remember, does anybody here remember the 2008 recession? Yeah, right? So we lost our house, we lost our 401k, and Americans lost their libido because we quit having babies in 2008. We have a lower birth rate today than we had in 2007. And so starting this year in Georgia high schools, you will have the smallest class sizes we've had in 30 years, which means if our high school classes are smaller, our college classes are smaller, which means our workforce is smaller. This is a 10-year to 20-year issue that we're going to have to deal with. So that's why I break the bad news to Brian and our business leaders around the state that It's not going to get better. And then the third thing is going to happen in 2030. My baby boomers are going to retire. Now, some of them are already retired, I get it. Some of you are in your head, you're already retired. We are not prepared to fill those 73 million worldwide jobs. And in the U.S. alone, we'll have 6 million more job openings than people to fill those jobs. Now, you have to figure out how do you keep baby boomers engaged in the workforce? Do you do job sharing? Do you rethink employment contract law? Do you rethink, like you did with teachers a few years ago, you passed a law to make it easier for them to come back into the classroom? I would argue that that's not working. We need to revisit that again. But thinking of ways to keep boomers engaged in the workforce is going to be critical for us. And then the fourth area that we're dealing with is the rise of artificial intelligence. We believe U.S. nationwide, about 12 million Americans will shift their career. It's really going to hurt us, Senator Hickman, in rural Georgia, where about 20% of our rural jobs that are low-skilled are going to be lost to AI in the coming years. And so how do you make the next generation AI-proof, more productive, and to think differently about their workforce? And I'll just share one more slide with you and stop here. Just to put this in perspective, over the next 7 years, what you're dealing with, you've got roughly 350 to 400,000 job openings in Georgia right now. What I'm most concerned about is we have just under 50,000 healthcare job openings. By 2028, that'll be 61,000 healthcare openings. By 2030, I will have 100,000 healthcare job openings in Georgia. That is a crisis. That is a desperate, desperate crisis of care. Right now, we have roughly 11,000 education openings. By 2028, I'll have 13,000 more. That number could be up to 50,000 educator shortage by 2030. Manufacturers, which we've heard before, and I'm sure Stephen's going to talk about this as well. Right now in manufacturing, 20,000 job openings by 2028, 30,000. 30,000 does not include Hyundai or Rivian. We've not put those numbers in yet. You'll have more manufacturers as a percentage of the Georgia total workforce than at any point in our history by 2030. And then the kicker is when the baby boomers retire, we are going to be in trouble because we have told for 20 years, we've told every Georgia high school student they need a 4-year degree. 40% of all of our skilled workers will retire in 2030. 40%. So nobody to fix your plumbing, nobody to fix your roof, build your dock. I'm trying to fix my back deck now, and it's nearly impossible to do it. So what are the solutions? And there's more data here, Mr. Chairman. We're happy to, you can take it and look at it. But some of the suggestions that we've heard from our members in the 230 times we've done this: fix the child care tax credit, require real-world experience, whether that's, last year we had a bill before the General Assembly so that every high school graduating senior had to take a class in skills, right? Here are the skills you need to be successful in workforce. Pretty simple. We should be expanding dual enrollment in college and career academies, not curbing that or pulling that back. We have to align all of our career pathways. Right now, they are not aligned with our high school, technical colleges, and universities. They're not on the same pages. They're not coordinated with their local school systems as well. I have a school system I talked to the other day. They had no healthcare job pathway, but yet they were the major center for a health center for their whole region of the state. We recommend licensure reform, which I know is not your committee, it's another committee, but we're working with them as well. Record expungement. Licensure reform helps those second chancers come back in. It helps military men and women that are moving to the state. I think the work that you did last year, Senator Hickman, on literacy is absolutely critical, but we got to fund it this time around, right? It's one thing to have the program, it's another thing to have the money to go out and do it. Mr. Chairman, I gave you that in a hurry. I'll stop and answer questions or just get back in my car and go give this somewhere else, whatever you want me to do.
Chris, first off, thank you for coming. This is obviously critical information. Two quick things I wanted to make a point on. The first one is artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So we are spending a lot of time in that as well. In fact, we'll be hosting some separate committee meetings outside of this coming this fall. Depending on who you talk to, there's a lot of experts, and some of them are probably artificial intelligence experts. They're looking at, the reduction of white-collar jobs like we've never seen, right? Whether it be people who work in technology, human resources, finance. In some cases, they're talking about a finance organization that you may have 65% of your people that are no longer needed to have a job in 5 years from now. So I think in seeing the gaps that you presented, maybe that is a huge opportunity for us to figure out how we're going to transition people from those into other jobs. And I know typically people have always gone from blue-collar to white-collar jobs. In this case, we might be going exactly backwards. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that for a
Well,
moment.
actually, Lexi, will you go back a slide to one more? So we spend a lot of time talking about how you AI-proof your career, right? And so that you can move between whether it's white collar back to blue, whether it's pink over to red, whatever the colors are going to be in the future. These are the skill sets that every student in Georgia needs. If you've got these skills, no matter what job you go into, what career path you face, you're going to be able to AI-proof it. If you can work with teams, if you understand critical thinking, data literacy, innovation, risk-taking, all those things our kids should be getting if they were working earlier, they're not getting today. So yes, I think AI is going to come in the second wave and the third wave. I talked to a major employer the other day. He has 50,000 openings nationwide. I said, so those are probably all like, you know, service delivery folks at the front end when as you greet and interact. He says, no. It's all the tech folks in the back to build out the app, to build the robots, to build all the systems in place to take care of the fact that we can't hire the other workers. So you're absolutely right.
And the last point, you're talking about the baby boomers, because, you know, a huge portion of them have already retired. And one of the things that we're seeing as we're talking to different folks is during COVID, you know, people obviously had a different perspective. Life was a little too short. Stock market went through the roof. Made a lot of sense to retire early. And a lot of those folks took Social Security early.
Yep.
But because of the way Social Security penalizes that person who took it early, a lot of those folks cannot come back to work without turning that upside down. Again, realizing that's a federal issue, not a state issue. Are you seeing any of that as well? And maybe we can do our best to work with our federal counterparts on that.
Yeah, I think, well, federal needs to fix that, and they also need to fix immigration reform, right? Those are two critical issues. But we're trying to, we've not talked about the Social Security issue. We've been trying to get employers to understand, hey, I got a guy, he's 57, he's going to retire in 3 years. What do we start doing with him today to make sure that he stays with us and extend his life has been our focus.
Fair enough. Other questions for Chris?
Y'all are
All right, one question from Senator Estevez.
More of a comment, but I did, by the way, it was a beautiful day coming up here, and this presentation has made it a little gloomy.
Wow. I try to do it with a smile, though, Senator.
You did it very well, by the way.
Thank you.
At the Outlook Future Talent Demand slide, you pointed this out, but I just want to put a finer point on it. The need in 2028, 2030 around healthcare is around the boomers and the older Generation X who are retiring and are going to need that healthcare.
Right.
So it's a cliff, but it's kind of a double cliff because you can't. The people who are retiring are actually going to need that support, which I think provides even more incentives for my colleagues to fix it now, because it's going to make it even harder to fix in the future when you have the retirees and then the need to take care of those same retirees.
You're looking at about 24% of Georgia's workforce will be over the baby boomer age by 2030, or not workforce, but total population. Where I'm really worried about that center is in rural communities, right? Where we're from, where Champ and I are from, we don't have those health care services there. And so how are you going to take care of your parents? How are you going to get, whether it's the nurse practitioners? We got to rethink that whole system for the long term. But yeah, we have to think we're caring for baby boomers at a whole different level. And there's an impact there, too, on taxes for your local governments. They're not going to have the tax resources that they have right now flowing through the system, because once you retire, you're not paying those income taxes. You get the homestead exemptions. There's just a cascade of issues that are going to happen. That's why we do this talk with a lot of mayors and county commissioners, too. You got to be thinking 10 years out right now about how you're going to fund your basic social services, particularly transportation and other services for your seniors.
Chris, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
presentation.
Yes, sir.
And we will
Anytime.
definitely be following up, and a lot of
Sounds
great
good.
recommendations.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, and Baton Cleanup today, we are thrilled to have SK Innovation here. Stephen, if you want to make your way down to present, I'm sure most of you have seen this little facility we have off the side of the interstate, not too far from here. But we're thrilled to have SK here. Thank you for getting here early and helping to secure our facility, and a little something for everybody to nibble on when they got here. But thank you for your efforts here in Georgia and all the hiring you have done. And the impression you've made on this community. Turn it to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my name is Stephen Jang. I'm employee number 1 at this little plant down the street. We're currently employing just north of 3,000 folks. We're operating 24/7, et cetera, et cetera. We're the supplier for the Ford F-150 Lightning as well as the Volkswagen ID4. When I was asked to come here to talk about expanding Georgia's workforce, Chris has heard me say this before. I'm from suburban New York. Americans don't like change. You know, I go back to my little hometown in suburban New York. My bagel shop better be the same. My pizzeria better be the same. We don't like change. And that's the problem we face at this point. And that's about manufacturing. The Commissioner Taylor said about agriculture. Everybody says the same thing. Manufacturing isn't what it used to be. I'm an industrial engineering degree holder that did my senior project at a steel mill in Long Island City, New York. I did not want to go into manufacturing. That was many, many years ago. But it is not what it is now. You know, we don't manufacture. Kubota doesn't manufacture. Robots do the manufacturing. We just sit there, our production staff sits there, pushes buttons to weld, pushes buttons to assemble an EV cell. You know, it's different paradigm. And the biggest struggle that, you know, my team has is trying to convince the educator on a K through 12 level, the parent, the grandparent. The kids are the least of our worries. It's the older generation that thinks manufacturing is what they saw 30 to 40 years ago. And this is across the board. It's agriculture, it's everything. That's what we're facing. Every employer is facing similar hurdles because of that. 90% of my team's time is going out into the community. As I call it, brainwashing them early from a K level, talking about manufacturing, what the career opportunities are out there, just to change that paradigm. But in America, as Americans, it's very difficult to change that paradigm. And I think we don't need to expand Georgia. Stephanie said it earlier. 30% of Georgia's high school grads do not continue their education. That's your workforce. That can fund, or that could supply most of the manufacturing, maybe even agriculture, but it's trying to get those kids to realize what is out there, because a lot of folks, they do not. And 99% of the time, it is the parent that's the hurdle rather than the student. And, you know, to think, you know, our production starting is making, I don't know, 50-something thousand a year on a salary basis. And I can draw, because our manufacturing is so new, and this type of automation and robotics is so new, I can draw a line from that high school graduate to our plant manager. It may take a little bit longer time, but they can get there over time. And Chris has mentioned it, everybody has mentioned it. You know, that the concept of I was the first one in my family to go to college, old news. The 4-year bachelor's degree holder sitting with $150,000 in debt without a job is a big problem. We need to get it into everybody's heads that with a little bit of dual enrollment, a little bit of technical training, high school level, technical college level, that you can have a career, not just in manufacturing, nursing, it doesn't really matter. Georgia's technical college, and I visited a lot of states in the Southeast, Georgia's technical college system is amazing. And that's, I'm being nice and understating it. It is the best in the area, potentially in all of the US. And we're not using that. We're not taking that opportunity to train our workers. And retraining, if the middle-aged folks are coming back, you can still get trained. This is very trainable work. And it's, yes, the high school kid is better because they play with their phone their whole lives, and all our manufacturing is just pushing a little button. But at the end of the day, that's the paradigm shift we need. As for us, we do see the importance in that. We are currently working with TCSG, UGA, K through 12, to enlighten, I would say, is a better word, to enlighten what's out there in manufacturing. Because of intellectual property and security protocol that we have, I can't open the doors to everybody, but we're trying to open the doors to students as much as we can, to show them what's there, show them what robotics is, show them what automation is, show them what precision, clean manufacturing is. And I think as a state, we need to get over that, and we need to market everybody. You know, everybody here should go out there and just talk to folks about manufacturing, about nursing, because there's a significant shortage across the board on these skill-related jobs that the four-year degree will not get you. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, so I'll just leave it at that, and I can try to answer any questions if you have.
Stephen, thank you very much. Obviously very helpful. Can you remind us again how many people you employ?
Just north of 3,000 at the moment. That's for the Commerce facility. We're opening up another one in Cartersville in a couple of years. That's a joint venture with Hyundai to supply their Savannah plant, and that's going to employ approximately 3,500.
Fantastic. Other questions from the committee members? Senator Beach.
I just want to make a comment. I had a friend of my son's who came to see me to try to find a job. He went to University of North Georgia, got a liberal arts degree, and to your point, he had never had a job in high school, never had any jobs. Got a liberal arts degree, and he was asking me to help him find a job, and my advice to him was, you're going to have to go back to technical college and get a skill and be certified in something, because there's not a lot you can do with this four-year liberal arts degree, and to your point, he's got debt, and he wants a job. It's a tough situation out there, and I used to be a firm believer that all our kids, because I represent North Fulton and Cherokee, pretty affluent area, that they all went to four-year college. I have changed my mind. I think they need to look at technical colleges. They need to get certified. A great example in our district, John, is Alcon. Those jobs pay $75,000 to $85,000. They're high-tech manufacturing. They are good jobs. And you can get a job there with a certification pretty quickly. So we've got to rethink things, and we got to get people working in high school and college. I'm glad to hear. I didn't know Dr. Moorhead had made that statement, but that's a good thing. So anyway, I just want to make those comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and I've already been emailing Haley to put that on top of our recommendation list. Champ, go ahead.
Okay, you mentioned most of your staff, or a lot of your staff, is in the community a lot. Like, what ways are they engaging with the community?
It's at all levels of education, K through 12, but they're at, chamber meetings, Kiwanis meetings, career days, talking to a first grade class that will listen. But you got to change levels in terms of what we're doing. We can be using Legos to talk to elementary school kids. There's plenty of robotics programs out there currently in the community. First Lego, First Tech, First Robotics. There's certain school districts that get it, and they're more engaged, but it's still education about manufacturing, because the stigmatism that America still has is that manufacturing is dirty, dangerous, et cetera, when that is the furthest thing from the truth. Currently, even in this community at Kubota, at us, it's a very clean, safe manufacturing environment. And with the great job that the state has been doing in terms of economic development, a lot of the manufacturing, especially in our world, in renewables and EV space, they're landing all across the state, and those jobs are going to be the same. And until we can make that shift as Americans to that new form of manufacturing, we're still going to suffer trying to get staff, and hence we're still going back, taking a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach, where we engage K through 12. Deputy Commissioner Barbara Wall, we've been working very closely with her on the Department of Education try to engage in externships where teachers, now educators, are coming back because they're the ones that's been pushing, no offense to any educators in here, but they're the ones that's been pushing the four-year education so much. So I think we need to change from a K through 12 educators level to try to encourage more skill-based technical college and dual enrollment to push that initiative. Yes, sir.
I do have one quick question, Mr. Chairman. Are you recruiting out of state? You know, you see the South Dakota governor trying to recruit welders to come to South Dakota and plumbers. Are you looking at any out-of-state programs to try to lure people to come here and work at SK?
Sir, that's a completely different issue in terms of workforce housing. And that's always been an issue, especially in rural Georgia, because there aren't that many multifamily homes that are available. But as I said, circling back, I think personally, COVID during 2020 and 2021 made us very think outside the box. And you know, at the time, I used to be in everyone who would listen to me in office saying, we need workforce, we need workforce, we need workforce. But, you know, 22 came around and we realized the workforce is actually sitting right here. It's now educating, training the folks here and even coming back into the workforce, training them to be a nurse in manufacturing or whatever it may be.
Stephen, thank you so much. We appreciate your speech today and your presentation. In closing, want everybody to keep on their calendar. On October the 26th, will be a meeting at Dalton State University. We've got a pretty packed agenda already for that meeting. Again, if you are willing to present your testimony and we do not have time for you on the agenda, please go to our website and fill that out. We are working on the draft part of the report. Haley, thank you. I thought we heard a lot of good things to add that today. So for the committee members, we're going to continue to send out what that kind of bulleted list looks like, and we need your input early because the goal would be is in the final meeting in November, we will then approve that report. And the last thing, you know, we had a lot of really good, very direct feedback today, which I think everybody needed to hear. And it gets back to what a job does, right? A job, as Ronald Reagan said it best, is the greatest social program ever created, right? And it solves a litany of problems here at the state, so we have a pecuniary interest to make sure that we work together and lock arms, and we can and will solve this problem together. So thank you for your time, thank you for your talent and presentations today, and look forward to seeing you soon. This meeting is hereby adjourned.